Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on Good Afternoon Ghana. My name is Aldo Moore. It's a pleasure coming your way. It's a beautiful Monday morning here on Good Afternoon Ghana. We bring you the stories that are making the rounds in this very minute or in the course of the day. Now, Ssnit's intention to offload or to dispose about some 60% of its shares in some 4 strategic hotels to a cabinet minister, that's a minister for agriculture, that's Mr. Brandy Champon, and the fact that the member of parliament for North Tongue, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, has petitioned Shraj on this matter. It's a topic that won't go away because every day different angles and different dimensions pop up as far as that conversation is concerned. And today, this afternoon, there's a very interesting dimension that we're going to be looking at. And that dimension has to do with the processes and the procedure and corporate governance structure matters that have come up as far as this matter is concerned. Because some people feel that until and unless we deal with these fundamental issues, we'll continue to have this because it appears that there's certain loopholes in either the Ssnit Act or Public Procurement Act, et cetera, that politicians are taking advantage of and selling off state assets to themselves. And so we need to deal with these fundamental issues, and then we can come back, then we'll be fine, basically. So my name is Aldo Moro. When I come back, I'll be advertising the WhatsApp line, and then also I'll be introducing my resource persons. Stay tuned in. All right, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Ghana. So we all know that the sitting member of parliament for the Northern constituency, that Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, has petitioned the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, that's charged, to investigate the sale of some 4 hotels owned by Ssnit and to Brandy Champon's Rock City Hotel. Now, Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa wants that transaction to be halted, and so he has petitioned Shraj to look into it. He's actually accused in fact, he's described the process in many ways, like due diligence, there's a case of conflict of interest, etc., etc., etc. He's named quite a number of things that he believes that Shraj must take keen interest in. But let me just share with you what the latest news is. Now, the same Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa has said that he has actually been talking to a legal luminary and an accountant based in the United States. You know him, Professor Kwekwaza, as we affectionately call him, but it's Professor Kwekwasari. He has petitioned him. He's been talking to him. The whole idea is that, can you form a team for us to sponsor a bill in Parliament? Yeah, let's sponsor a bill in Parliament, a bill that would explicitly state or will get politicians hands off or will stay their hands off the acquisition and sale of public property or public assets. So if they're going to be sponsoring a bill, it's going to be a private member's bill that will be sponsored in Parliament. So that's the latest I have for you now. And so that document, as we speak, is being prepared. The second issue that I'm going to be bringing to your attention, which you may not have heard already, is that the Member of Parliament says that his deep throat sources tell him that the deal will be finalized, the deal will be closed, and that Rock City and Ssnit are bent. They're determined to make sure that they consummate the deal. So what it means is that it's going to happen if what the Honourable Member of Parliament is saying is anything to go by. Now, one of the things that he says he intends to do to make sure that this deal doesn't come on is that he would be staging a mammoth rally, and he was going to be staging a mammoth protest on the 18th of June. In fact, the police has already been informed, in line with the Public Order Act, about this intended demonstration. So those are the 2 issues that have come up. I'll call them news just in. I'm not going to say breaking news, but it's just news just in. So that's new. That's one of the freshest dimensions to the matter. But beyond that, there are fundamental issues that have to be dealt with, which is procedure, processes, corporate governance structure, etc., etc. Let me say that this afternoon I have 3 personalities who are more than capable of dealing with this vexed issues. Now, Professor Bafo Ajimadua is a former UN governance advisor, and he's joined us via Zoom. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Always my pleasure to be with you.
Na Ayele Adefio Sechere is a senior officer in charge of public relations and campaign with the Trades Union Congress. That's a TUC. Na Ayele, good afternoon. Okay. Now, and also Kobina Atabedu is a procurement expert. He's also but he's also a management consultant. Kobina, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. Good afternoon, Moro.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we're also waiting for Nayeli to join the Zoom link so that I can run my questions by her. But I'll start with you, Kobinata Bedu. Now, I'm sure you've been following, it's quite clear that you've been following the discussions on this intended sale of 4 of Ssnit's assets, hotels we're talking about, to Rock City Hotels Limited. And of course, it's 100% owned by Mr. Brandon Champo. Now, having monitored the discussion so far within the media circles, do you think that the critical issues are being dealt with? Are we asking the relevant questions? Are we looking at, are we dealing with the vexed issues? Or you think that there are issues that perhaps that we haven't really brought to the fore that you would like to do that for us this afternoon?
Okay, so good afternoon to your viewers and your listeners. When I was called and my opinion was sought, it was more to do with the fact that would they have gone through the right procurement processes? And the clarity I had to provide was the fact that...
Kobina, your video is... Sorry, Kobina, your video is off, so the public don't really know who is talking. If you can switch it on so that we can see you talk to us, sir.
So when my opinion was sought, I had to clarify that when it comes to the sale of shares and equities, it is outside of the scope of the procurement law.
Right.
And so what I would say, the aspect of the transaction that relates to procurement has to do more with the process for acquiring the transaction advisor, because that is the procurement of technical services. And so that would have to go through the full PPA process. And as to whether they went through that, it's a different conversation because I'm not privy to that process. However, looking at the whole transaction and picking them up from different angles, it has to do with issues that relate to divestment, which is measures and acquisitions. It has to do with management of pensions and pension funds. There's a corporate governance dimension. There's an element of public financial management in it, and a subset of which is public-private partnerships. Then also there are general issues of management practices that we can ask. And then the issue of almighty ethics, which is the application of the code of conduct for public officers. So these are the different elements that come to the fore.
Okay. So, Kobina, please go ahead and flesh out these interesting dimensions that you've raised as far as this matter is concerned.
Yes, so on the issue of pensions and management of pensions funds, Ssnit is under the regulation of the National Pensions Act. And the National Pensions Act spells out the functions of the Pensions Authority and spells out, when it comes to Ssnit in particular, it spells out who can be on the board. Now, if you look at the structure of the board, it is largely representation from worker groups, largely. And it has a chairman and then a director general. Now, it states nothing about the qualification or the competencies that are required for these individuals. In one breath, it talks about the fact that one has to be a woman. And then in another breath, it talks about the fact that one has to be a representative from the Ministry of Finance, which is well and good. But pensions is a subset of insurance. And when you come to that space, you are dealing with annuation and superannuation. And so it's not everybody who is an insurance specialist who would even understand or know about annuation and superannuation. So if you are going to have people sit on the board, and I also stress that the board of a company is the controlling mind. They are the ones who determine what has to be done. The management of the company and the workers are just officers of the company. They all work for and report to the board, and they all together report to the shareholders. So the board is a very, very critical unit within the corporate structure. Now, if you have the board, which is the controlling mind, that the act arrogates all the responsibilities to, not to the officers and the employees. And you have a board that is supervising the officers and employees, but they don't have the requisite. And I'm always careful when I say they don't have the requisite, because individually, each one might be a professional in his own rights, well qualified in his own rights. But when it comes to the practice of pensions and the practice of insurance, do they have what it takes? A few of the competencies that are required is actuarial science. So is there an actuary on the board? Fund management is also a competency that is required. Is there someone who is a fund management specialist on the board? You need to do a lot of investment appraisal and all that. Is there someone who has that capabilities on the board? You would also need project management, monitoring, and evaluation. Is that someone? So if you look at all these things and you are looking at the people at the board, how you have to evaluate the investments that comes in. Because when funds come in, don't forget, all workers in Ghana, especially in the formal sector, and some people from the private sector, are contributing to the fund. Now, the amount that goes into the fund is called asset under management. So if you take the asset under management, the act spells how it's supposed to be used. If you come to the private sector, that is the tier 2, the act is very specific on the instruments they can invest in. But when it comes to the tier 1, it gives them a carte blanche and it leaves the investment decisions to the board. And that is why it is important that the board is a very strong one. Now, if you come and ask yourself, if you are going to do an investment, or we want to do a divestment, what is informing the divestment? The first question you ask yourself is, what is the portfolio of investment that Ssnit has? And after reviewing all of them, which investments are marked for disposal? Should real estate be the first one? I want to believe that they have a lot more other investments which are not performing. So why are we not dealing with those ones first and we are coming to real estate? There's a reason why real estate is called real estate. At least in Ghana, real estate doesn't depreciate, it only appreciates. So why are we dealing with that one? Investment in these hotels, they are in different classes of tiers. So in hotels, they tier it from 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. So how many 5 stars do they own, and who are their peers? Now you ask yourself, you take a Labad, which is 5-star, and you compare it to a Kempinski and then a Movenpick. You could ask yourself, how are they faring? Are they profitable? So if they are profitable, why is Labadi not profitable such that it's being sold? Is it because their management practices are not good? Is it because there's a lot of political interference or interference from other places? So there are lots of questions that you ask before you get into this. Then you come to the issue of public financial management and public-private partnerships. The Ministry of Finance has a policy, a national policy on public-private partnerships. To what extent did they comply to the dictates of that policy for them to get to this point? So if you evaluate all these things, the issue of a minister of state owning the company, he is the 100% shareholder. He is one of 2 directors. It means he is the controlling mind. It means he is involved in the operations somehow, because everything management will do is deferred to him for his approval as a board of the director of the board. So as a member of parliament, as a minister of state, as a cabinet minister, his peer is the finance minister, who is the supervising minister of Ssnit. And is there some form of influence being exerted here? Now, when I say this, I don't say this to impugn anything on anybody. But you see, I always stress that the Bible says that all things are permissible and not all things are beneficial. There are times when the optics are not good. And it is not good for one to be.
Well, the Zoom, it appears that a Zoom connection is acting up. We'll try and get Kobna Tabidu back. He's making some really interesting analysis, isn't he? But except the part where he talks about a clear conflict of interest, the fact that Brani Champon is, the controlling mind of the organization. It was actually a question I wanted to ask him on that, but we lost him. Well, we'll get him back. Mr. Kobna Tabidu, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're talking about
Yes.
the fact that you can't rule out the possibility of an influence from the top.
Yes, there's a possibility of and the exertion of some form of influence because there's a code of conduct for MPs and there's a code of conduct for ministers in the Constitution. And this morning, Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa cited some quotation from the Anabosman ruling on the Minister of Transport case that they investigated. And he was clear on some of these things that a public officer is not supposed to even place himself in a position where he will be questioned. So, taking the learnings from that, one would not expect that a certain minister of state who is a peer to the minister of finance, who is on the same cabinet with him, would place himself in a situation where a decision will have to be taken on his business. What traditionally, and Mr. Bafo can elucidate more on that. When normally there are issues of conflict of interest coming up, if you can see it, normally what you are supposed to do is to recuse yourself. So what you find normally happen is that the individual removes himself from the company. So he gives up his shares and then he gives up his directorship. So if you will all go back and remember, when Donald Trump was made president of the United States, or when he decided to run,
All right. Kobna's connection, it's acting up once again. Kobna, we just hope that we can fix that quickly and get back to you. But whilst we're waiting, let me go to Professor Bafo Ajimandia. Prof, there was actually something that I disclosed on the show this afternoon. Prof, can you hear me, sir?
I hear you, Beru.
Yes. So there's a new dimension to this whole matter. The Member of Parliament, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, has said that he, in collaboration with persons like Professor Kweku Asare, intend to sponsor a bill in Parliament. The whole idea is to come up with a law that explicitly gets politicians to stay off, politicians and public, so here he talks about public office holders, to stay off the sale and acquisition of state assets. Of course, the second thing he said is that he intends to stage a massive demonstration on the 18th. So those are the two new angles that have popped up as far as this matter is concerned. So could you care to address the first one? What do you make of this? Do you think it's a good initiative? It's a good move?
It is an excellent move. But by the way, let me also commend Mr. Ado, the previous panelist, for giving a very, very insightful comments on this matter, especially regarding corporate governance and the ethics and code of conduct that our public officials are expected to live by. So I really enjoyed his interpretation and his insights. To your point, I think it's a great idea for Mr. Okujeto, a member of parliament, to initiate this private members bill to stop public officials from acquiring this. There's a context for this. Now, let us appreciate the fact that over the years, throughout this Fourth Republic, under every government, public officials have acquired properties, either land or buildings, all kinds of things that they acquire at bottom basement prices, I should say. And that has been a worry so far as governance and need for integrity in governance is concerned. So this new initiative, I think, is an excellent one. Nonetheless, I would highly recommend that they do not just stick to public officials. They must extend it to high political party officers. The reason I'm saying this is that in our country, for better or for worse, there's a very fine line between a party in power and the state. That is to say, the relation between the state and the party that is in power is very, very fine. We know that in our system, top party officials attend cabinet meetings. Top party officials are appointed to very important, at times very crucial state agencies, especially where there is heavy cash flow. So if we have that in our system, and you only limit this initiative of taking public officials off the sale or acquisition of public assets, I don't think that will be enough at all. So I'm saying, whilst supporting the move by Blackwell and his friends, they should expand their proposal to include top political party officials. If they do that, then I think we'll be on the right path to really stop not just public officials, because political party officials are organically linked to the state once their party win power. And therefore, it's important we put the two together in this particular initiative.
Oh, sorry about that. So I guess the point you're making is that don't limit this bill to only public office holders, because even though on paper they are called public office holders, in reality, there are politicians who are even more powerful than these public office holders. So rope everybody in. So chairman or national chairman, general secretary, national organizer, youth organizer, women's organizer, all these guys must be roped in and estopped from participating in these kinds of deals. That's the point you're making.
Excellent. That's exactly the point. Because as I say, in our country, the distinction between high party officials and the state, once that party is in power, is almost non-existent.
Right.
Because as I said, they do attend cabinet meetings and they do participate in high-level state. At times, they even are part of negotiations on behalf of the state. So I think we should extend it to cover all these people. Because again, if you look at our record, those who acquire public properties or public assets include high public officials. Even the houses, the lands that they sell at bottom rate prices when they're in power, it goes not just to those who are ministers or those who are in certain high political appointment, but it also includes high party officials.
Right.
And therefore, this initiative should cover both sides.
Okay. So great initiative, but broaden the scope, extend the scope, and roping all these guys. But Prof, would you be surprised to hear that the deal is coming on? The deal is happening, according to the Honorable Member of Parliament. Is that despite everything that he has said, despite the fact that Straj has been invited to intervene, Straj is looking into the matter. Unfortunately, the Straj Act doesn't give Straj the power to halt the process. And in fact, the Honorable Member of Parliament is saying that one of the things that he's looking at is for us to perhaps look at the Straj Act again in order to give Straj the power to halt a process which somebody is petitioning its officers about, so that you don't have a situation where, you have Straj then makes a decision after the fact, and then it really doesn't achieve the purpose for which the petition was invoked anyway. I don't know what you think about this.
Yes, I'm glad you're now looking at all these loopholes in our laws. So if in fact Straj doesn't have that power, it will be important to give it that power so that in a case such as we are confronted with, Straj can place an embargo or, stop the process until the matter is resolved. And the same thing, by the way, talking about these things, I think we should also connect to the access declaration that public officials make when they assume power or they assume their offices, but nothing else is said once they leave office. There's a serious loophole in the access declaration law also. So if you're looking at access, acquisition of assets and all, I wish for Okudzeto Ablakwa and his friends to look broadly, because if you just plug this hole, tomorrow we're going to discover another hole elsewhere. So this whole idea of access acquisition, wealth acquisition by public officials, wealth that belongs to the state, I think must be looked at its broader context. So once and for all, we plug all these holes so that we can stop public officials from excessively feeding on the state. So yes, I think this idea of getting the law to stop public officials from acquiring state assets, getting the SHRAG to perhaps expand its law to give it the power to put the process on hold until the necessary investigations are done and decisions are made. And again, going back to this assets declaration, also making sure that public officials do declare their assets, and after they finish their tenure, we have to examine their assets to see how much more they've acquired once in public office. All these are creations of the Constitution that left big gaps, big holes, to enable public officials to continue to plunder this country, as we've been experiencing over the past many years of this republic.
Now, Prof, when I come back to you, there's a question I'll be asking you, and I want us to call a spade and not a tool for digging. The thing is, should we do it? I mean, should we say that once you're a politician or you're a public office holder, it doesn't matter what expertise you have, it doesn't matter what skill set you have, it doesn't matter what competencies you have. If you can do or you can deliver a service, must you be stopped from doing it simply because you hold a public office? Don't you think that we need to have a much more dispassionate and objective view about this matter? And but I'm not asking you to answer that question yet. I'm just asking you to give it some thought. I'm gonna come back to you on that. If Professor Bafo Ajimandia has a certain expertise in a certain area and he is also a minister or whatever, holds a public office, are we gonna say don't do it? Because we'll come back to that. But now I don't know whether Na is joined us now from the TUC. Na Satre, are you on with us now? Hello, Na. Hello? Oh. We're actually hoping to talk to Nayele. Nayele, Abefio.
I'm on the line. Can you
fantastic.
hear me?
I can hear you now. I mean, I couldn't hear you before, but I can hear you now.
I muted myself to listen to all the good conversation going on.
And I can tell that you've been enjoying yourself. Now, as for you, when I say you, I'm talking about TUC. The biggest criticisms that the public or a section of the public has held at you is, why did you sit down and looked on whilst this transaction was happening? You're supposed to be protecting the interest of fund, the fund saver, or you're supposed to be protecting the interest of the contributor. That's the word I was looking for. Why did you sit down? It's been almost 3 years whilst everything was happening. What was TUC doing? What role did you play? What was your position when you heard this thing was happening?
Very interesting. It's by the way, it's not just a TUC, it's organized labor.
Organized labor. Yeah, but please switch your video on. My audience are just sending me messages, say they want to see you. So please switch your video on so they can see you.
Where I am, I have very bad
connection,
signal
internet
for data. So
all right.
I can't keep my video on. I'll just switch it on briefly.
Okay.
And then perhaps turn it off, because otherwise then I won't be able to speak with you.
That's fine.
But
they'll be happy. They'll be happy to see you for a minute. Yeah, that's great. That's her. Yes, that's
right.
now. Yes.
Right. So this is organized labor and not just the TUC.
Right.
And it's interesting. I've answered this question umpteenth time. The impression is being given as if organized labor has just sat down. And in fact, anytime there was any kind of divestiture, whether it was Ssnit, whether it was government itself and whoever, workers raise concerns. And that is what we have been doing. You do also agree that when you're working with a kind of a caucus, in this case, the Ssnit governing board happens to be this caucus that I'm referring to, has 4 labor representatives. And to begin with, we are outnumbered by the others. They are 8 in number. So you take a decision and you keep talking about an issue. This matter was introduced at the governing board in 2018. So the labor representatives have not just sat down. If you say that, then you are talking about the fact that they went to sleep on the board. And I'm sorry, you're very wrong if you look at it that way.
Right.
1, if you are in a boardroom discussing issues, you don't run out every minute when there is a challenge. What do? You are representing a certain constituency. So you go in there to put your expertise on the line, to put your skills on the line to try and defend your position or the position of the constituency that you're representing. And so until you get to a point where this becomes overwhelming and it becomes a challenge for you to handle, you move back to your constituency to let them know that, well, we have handled this issue to this level and we think that we need the bigger body and the strength of the constituency. And that's exactly what has happened. And in our press conference, we did point out the fact that the organized labor representatives on the Ssnit governing board since 2018 have been raising issues. So, you should be wondering why it is only now. Because they have constantly warded off the issue. If it comes up, and I think all of us should have our minds go to the fact that recent happenings, even in Ssnit itself, should tell us something. We can't come to the public as organized labor when you are not certain about the issues. You need to be certain. Very well, we applaud the job that Honorable Okujeto has done, and we support it 100%. And in fact, all of us should put our shoulders to the wheel to ensure that this deal, whatever it is, does not go through. And if it does, we will advise ourselves as labor. And I think we have made this in no uncertain terms. We have made it plain enough. So it is wrong when anybody thinks that organized labor has sat down. No, it hasn't sat down. It's been working, and we're happy that this issue is in the public domain. And in any case, when there are issues with Ssnit, we do talk about those. And where Ssnit decides to put investments on divestiture, organized labor raises concerns about these issues, if there are any. And I just want to make a little addition to what Professor Bafo Ajiman said a few moments ago, that when you come to declaration of assets, for me, it beats my imagination why public declarations are done. Oh, no, why the declaration of assets are done and they are not made public. Then what is the point in having public officers declare their assets? So they might
but now you also don't want to make them targets.
I do agree, but then there are certain levels where these would have to be made public up to a certain point, right? Yeah. So that you would know that these people came into power with so much and they're going out with that much. Right. Let's find a way. I'm sure there is a way that we could have public officers declare their assets. And as has been pointed, I agree absolutely with that, except that let's find a way of having them, having some maybe not everybody in the Ghanaian space, but then the people who matter know what they have declared, so that when they're going out with so much, we're able to hold them to it, and not just declare assets and hide the reports somewhere.
I get it.
So for me, that is what I want to add to this conversation.
Well, I think it's a very, very interesting point you've just made, because these are guys who live in the same community. If I know somebody declared their assets and said they had just one house in Osu, and I live in Osu, and all of a sudden I've seen the person putting up some other buildings, 2, 3, then I can see the difference, because I know what the person said they had before. So I get the point you're making, but it's got to be fine-tuned in ways that also doesn't, endanger them. So that's the other point. But let me come back to Mr. Kobna Tabedu. You're still with us? Yeah. Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. So please hang on. Yeah, please hang on a minute. We're going to take a short break. It's just a minute break. And when we come back, I'll get you to continue from where you left off. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Thank you. Take a short break. This is Good Afternoon, Ghana. Welcome back. It's 0244-262-314. 0244-262-314. That's the WhatsApp line. Please join the conversation. Let me know what you think about this conversation we're having. I'll be more than happy to hear from you. Joining me this afternoon to have a conversation about the different dimensions that have come up with this intended Ssnit, 60% sale of Ssnit as access to branded Champions Rock City. It's Kobna Tabedu. He's a management consultant and also a procurement expert. I also have Na Ayele Seche. She is with Organized Labor, and also Professor Bafo Ajimanjia. He's a former UN governance advisor who's also joined us. Now, Kobna Tabedu, welcome back, and thank you very much for staying on whilst we took that break. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay. Right. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, please carry on.
Workers' interest in this is because when pension funds, and I mean both tier 1 and tier 2, when they receive contributions, the normal thing is those contributions must be invested to yield returns, handsome returns, to grow the size of the asset under management, so that they would be in a position to pay pensions for those who will be due. Now, when they make investments which go bad, the fund goes bust. And then based on the number of people who are on roll, they pay pension. If there's no fund, they won't be in a position to pay. When the fund is healthy, they are in a position to pay pensions or contribute payouts. We find what we find today, where they pay paltry amounts to pensioners as their pension on a monthly basis. So it is imperative that the investments are well done and they are well thought through. It is for that reason that the framers of the law decided that they won't take a gamble with private sector operators. So they will define what instruments they can invest in.
Kobna, we can't see you. Sorry, we can't see you.
Up to about 85% of tier 2 funds are supposed to go into government bonds and bills. So it's only 15%, I think, thereabout that they can play with as far as risk is concerned. But tier 2 is well structured and well regulated that they can't put their money anywhere. The same is not said of Ssnit. And yet Ssnit receives 13% contributions. So more than twice as much what goes to the private funds is received by Ssnit. And workers do not have a visibility over what they are investing in. I think one of the gaps is the fact that in other regulated sectors, like the banking sector, all banks are mandated on a quarterly basis to publish their financials. Ssnit must be made to publish their financials. And not just their financials, they must be made to publish the instruments they are investing in. and the returns that are coming from it. So everybody will know what our funds are being used for. Because you and I are contributing, and yet we don't know what happens to our money. So if they put them in wrong places, and then they turn around to come and say they are non-performing, so they want to divest them, and they are divesting them for next to nothing. Because if you say that you are putting all these together, my question again is, how was it structured? Was it structured in lots where an investor can decide to bid for the equities of one hotel, or they put them together as a lump sum? So all the 6 were up. Because my understanding is that there were 6 in all. But at the moment, only 4 are being considered with Honorable Echampon's firm.
True.
So what happened to the 2? Is it that the 2 are non-performing, are loss makers, and they are that bad, so he's not interested in? If he's not interested in and it is hived off and he's giving the good ones, what happens to the bad ones? It means we are stuck with the bad ones.
True.
Then why didn't we keep all 6 so that these ones will come and net off the other one? So you have to, when you are doing a merger and acquisition of a portfolio, you sometimes bring in the good and the bad and the ugly, and you package all of them at once and say carry all. So it's take all or leave all. But if you can break it up, then my question again will be, who were those other companies that partook in the bidding process at the initial stages, out of which Rock City was selected? Did they go back to all those people and allow them to also choose and pick? That is a fair process. That is when the process is above board. But after you've made a selection, if you skew or you change the rules of the engagement, then other parties who expressed interest have been unfair. They have been unfair to other parties who expressed an interest. So these are a few of them. Now, I honestly speaking, I would want to see the portfolio of investments and the performance of each one of them. It's not just real estate, is only one of them. They are investing in different other instruments as well. How are they performing? What has been the total asset under management up to date? And where are all of them? What has been written off over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years? And why were they written off?
These are very important questions to ask. In fact, there's a point that you haven't added yet, which is how much revenue government is going to be losing when they dispose of these assets, because then SIGA loses a lot. We're talking some 20-something million. But anyway, because of lack of time.
My understanding is that Labadi Beach alone reported a 10 million profits the previous year.
Right.
And then last year, they reported a 25 million profits. That is 150% growth.
True.
In profitability.
True.
So if this is the case, this is not a business that is marked for sale, because its profitability is 150% of its previous year. Now, what is the potential? When you are selling a company and you are doing the valuation of the company, a lot of variables go into it. One of them is cash flow potential. So if we have a year of return, and then all the initiatives that are driving, we just finished African Cup of Nations, and I was there. I saw a lot of the teams there. I saw a lot of officials there. So, and Kempinski is full. Labadi is always full. You want to make a booking to have an event there, and don't have space. So if you are evaluating a business of this nature, and you are comparing it to their peers, why would you want to sell it?
Okay.
And at what price?
Right. Okay. Governor, thank you so very much. And I guess that I'll let go of you. Thank you. It's been wonderful having you. We like the insights that you've shared. We're grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Prof, would you now help us appreciate the question I asked about why are we morally and legally criminalizing persons who want to help the state because they have a certain expertise? The only crime is that he's the public office holder. Why? Hello, Prof, can you hear me? Hello, Prof, are you there? Okay. Whilst we're working to get through to Prof, let me now get to Nayeli. You are there, aren't you?
I am here.
All right. I don't have Prof yet, so I'll get you to give us your concluding remarks, about 2 minutes or so, and then if we're able to get Prof will also do another 2 minutes because we ran out of time. But here's the thing. The Honourable Member of Parliament disclosed on a media platform this morning that the deal is happening. It's on. And so it won't matter what opinion you express, it's on, it's happening.
Well, happily, we have laws, don't we? And we have legal systems, don't we? So, and we have pointed out that, well, they can talk their talk and we will walk our walk. And organized labor has signaled strongly that if the deal goes through without due process, we will advise ourselves. And I think it's about time. And I'm really grateful because we've been asking, well, if you have an ailing business, don't you get all the partners together? And for me, I think that we've raised concerns with Ssnit the way it's run. Even the Act 766, we have issues with, and we also have issues with pensions in this country because the 766 is supposed to harmonize pensions. But where are we? I mean, you look at the services or the forces, they have their pensions and it's separate. And you look at the universities, they have their pensions and it's separate. And I mean, we need to work. We have work to do.
Okay.
So, well, let the deal go through and we will see what we have to see. That's all.
All right. And thank you very much for joining us. So that's
Welcome.
Na Ayele Adefio Setra. Thank you very much for your time. We also lost Professor Bafo Ajimandia, unfortunately.
No, I'm here.
Prof.
I'm here.
Okay. Because, I kept mentioning your name. I didn't hear anything. So, Prof, can you in a minute just to sum everything up for us? And, the question I asked about, should we not sit and have a dispassionate and objective conversation about this, that
yes,
we must make some how do you call it? We must make some room, create room for certain kinds of people to be able to do these things and not say just because a public office or a politician, stay your hands off.
That is a very legitimate point that you've made, especially in the context of how we have treated our local entrepreneurs over the years, perhaps over the decades.
True.
We all know how under one regime, certain business people were chased out of the country and some were simply lost their businesses and all. So we need to build Ghanaian capacity for doing business. There's no question at all. And that's why in some ways I feel a little bit sad that Brian Achampong finds himself in this way. If you have done the right thing, one of us on this panel alluded to Donald Trump when he assumed office. In this country, we have a perfect example. When Dr. Parker Sindiom decided to enter public life, enter politics, he put all his businesses in what we call blind trust. That frees you to come into the public space without all these kinds of encumbrances. If Brian had done that, then of course his company would have had every right to bid and to win these kinds of things that he wanted. Because he didn't do that, I think that's what the problem is. But I do agree that if you are going to public service, we cannot mix public service with private service. Because within government, there will be a lot of in-dealings. They will know certain things that you and I will not know before it comes public. Okay. And that's where the conflict of interest comes in. Okay. So this is an issue that we need to explore further. I know we don't have time. So.
I was just about to ask, just 30 seconds, Prof. Should the president intervene in this impasse?
The president?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for him to step in. This is a problem between a cabinet member and in conflict with the law, so to speak. Let them sort it out. And if it becomes necessary for the president to intervene, he should surely intervene and advise his cabinet minister.
And Prof. Bafo Ajimandia is a former UN governor's advisor. He wraps it all up for us. Thank you very much for watching Good Afternoon, Ghana. My name is Aldo Moro. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.